Welcome, Main Streeters, to this midweek sermon application video with myself and Mr. Joshua Ryan Fail. Say hello, Joshua.
How's it
you had to
going?
say, you had to say, how's it going, right? I said, say hello, and you had to say, how's it going? Um, yeah, we had a good little Christmas break and haven't done this for a couple weeks, and so we're jumping back in to ask some questions about Sunday's text. And Josh is our expert on questions, and so he's got some good ones for us this evening. Uh, Sunday's sermon was First Peter chapter 5, the first 5 verses, and this is the way it reads from the English Standard Version. So I exhort the elders among you, as a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as partakers in the glory that is going to be revealed. Shepherd the flock of God that is among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion, but willingly, as God would have you, not for shameful gain, but eagerly, not domineering over those in your charge, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. Likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders. Clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility toward one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And that was Sunday's text. The outline was, who are the elders? What do the elders do? And why does it matter? So, Josh, what questions do you have for us this evening?
All right. Well, um, so to start, do you mind just reading for us just define what elders are? I know you preached about it, but just quickly tell everyone what elders are.
So elders are interchangeable with overseers and shepherds in the text. It's typically what we think of with the word pastor. We see multiple plurality of men who are qualified according to 1 Timothy 3, called to lead the church, or the ship was the analogy on Sunday, called to be the captains at the helm who equip the body for the work of ministry, who are given the responsibility of teaching and preaching and overseeing the body in various ways. So those are the elders in the church. They're also called pastors, overseers, shepherds.
Awesome. Thank you. So, with that in mind, my first question is, what you talked about in your sermon. We should have a plurality of elders, essentially because that's how God designed the church to be, in His Word. My question for you is, which I don't think you touched on a whole lot in your sermon, is what is the wisdom in plurality of elders? So God designed it in His infinite wisdom. So what's
Yeah,
wise about having plurality?
absolutely. Well, I love Isaiah proclaiming, his ways are higher than our ways. And so there are many things about the things that God does that we can't always explain every facet of, and we shouldn't have to. But we do see certain bits of wisdom in his good design, because we are showing the world something true about God. I believe one of the things that God shows true about him and about his church is a design for accountability for fallen people. Um, Elders, pastors are sinners. And so having a plurality of elders or pastors in your congregation allows them to feed off of each other, to sharpen each other, to hold each other accountable, and to help one another shepherd. Some of them are going to have strengths, and some of them are going to have weaknesses, and they can complement one another in various ways that gives a good, broad, diverse group of people who know each other and know their strengths and weaknesses and are able to give a really good shepherding to the body. And then I would also say that a plurality of elders just kind of makes sense from a logical standpoint of making disciples, doesn't it? Because we're called to multiply. And so, what harm could there be to the church if we have more teachers, more pastors, more shepherding, more gifts that are spread throughout the body? That can only do more good than harm. Like, we sort of have this idea in our brains based on culture that you've got the one pope, the one president, the one teacher of the classroom, the one leader. But God's church is designed differently. We have multiple so that we can multiply better and more swiftly, more broadly, and with better quality, I would say, as well. So those are at least two. I'm sure there are many more.
Yeah, it's really good. Awesome. So, do these elders, these plurality of elders, I know you talked about they don't necessarily, do they have to preach or how does that work?
That's a really good question. Yeah. So we know from the text that they must be able to teach, and we see the elders teaching in the New Testament. Um, when it comes to what we think of as the Sunday sermon, right? That moment of preaching to the whole body of Christ. I think that each elder should have the gift of teaching and preaching to a certain extent. There are some that are going to be more gifted than others. Some that we don't like using these terms, but maybe just kind of better or more naturally gifted towards public speaking, and they just have um, that sort of gifting, and so you might see them teaching more. But I think ideally, any elder that we would call at Main Street or at any church, um, it shouldn't be like world crashing, like earth shattering to see them preach a sermon. If that is the farthest thing from your mind to comprehend that individual preaching a sermon, they probably aren't able to teach. I'm not saying it's like a Spurgeon award-winning, preaching type of sermon, but if they could preach a sermon on a Sunday morning, it's not that they have to be um, Billy Graham, but could they preach a sermon? I think that would be a good question to ask. So if your question was, do they have to be able to preach? I would say yes. They don't have to necessarily preach every single week. They don't have to be the primary preaching teacher, but they should be able to preach and teach. Yes.
Okay. And so, two related questions. I'll ask this one first. Um, so, everyone's probably familiar with what a vocational pastor is, or vocational preacher, pastor, elder, and they're probably familiar with what a bivocational elder is. But what about a lay elder? So, can you kind of explain those three and what the
Mhm.
differences are between them?
Yeah, I'll try. Yeah, I didn't really get into that this Sunday. Each church has something different, and that's okay. The Lord gives different pastors for different seasons and different churches and different contexts, and based on the church's finances and what they can afford. We see Paul tell the church at Corinth in 1 Corinthians 9 that. Uh, the ox should not be muzzled in saying that he could have even demanded some type of compensation as an apostle, um, just because the labor of preaching and teaching and leading the church is worth that. You want that person to be able to be set aside for that work and not have various distractions. But at the same time, Paul was like, "Yeah, I'll build tents because I'm not going to charge people for the gospel." So we have that sort of dichotomy in the text of like, you want to support your leaders and make sure that they can focus wholeheartedly at the task of the ministry. At the same time, if there are some elders who or pastors who might be uniquely called to be tent makers as well. Um, and so, especially in a group of elders, in some of these small churches at Corinth or Colossae or Philippi, there were many elders. It is highly unlikely that all of them were full time vocational pastors in that one church. Um, there are certainly churches where that is the case, but I don't think that's the standard. So a vocational elder, where is the term you used, would probably be the person who is set aside for this, as this is full time. This is their primary work. They are fully devoted to this. They don't need any extra income. This is how they're providing for their family, and they're able to watch over the flock without any other side hustles. The bivocational elder or pastor is that one who has or I actually prefer the term co-vocational, which is how I would describe myself, um, who has the calling to work out in the workforce in a secondary career, but also has the calling to lead and pastor the flock of God. Um, and so that's what I do. I'm so thankful that the church lets me do that. I'm able to provide for my family. I've got a little girl on the way, and we just feel overly blessed by what the Lord's allowed us to do. And then finally, you said the lay elder is that person who still is responsible for shepherding, overseeing the flock, but they don't have any compensation from the church, and that is a good agreement with them in the congregation. And the uh, vocational elder, the co-vocational elder, and the lay elder are all on the same level of authority, right? So we're not trying to elevate one over the other. They all have that shared authority, though they may be able to participate in varying levels because of different job requirements outside of the church. So that was kind of a lengthy answer, but it's a really good question. And I think the Lord uses all three wonderfully in various church contexts. So I don't know what we'll have in the future of our church. Right now, you have myself and Joey, who one would be considered a lay elder and one would be considered co-vocational, if you wanted to put in those terms. But we just call ourselves pastors, right? So that's a good question.
Yeah, yeah. I bring that up simply because knowing, the size of our church, with having a plurality of elders in the future, it's very likely that they have not heard and
Oh,
probably.
ah,
All right.
okay. Welcome back. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Jeff.
Um, yeah, so I bring it up about the lay elder and bivocational elder and vocational elder just to, knowing the size of our church, it's very likely that we might maybe going down a lay elder path in the future, and that's not a very known word. People don't really know what that is. But also because of this, we know elders, they preach, they teach, they shepherd. You mentioned all that, but also, you know, what do they do in the meantime? Like, can you behind the scenes look at what elders do, plurality of elders, like not just on a Sunday morning or any of
Mhm.
that stuff? Because when you think about a lay elder and a co-vocational elder and a vocational elder, they obviously the lay elder and vocational elder, they have jobs and everything else outside of the workplace rather than the vocational elder. And then you also have these responsibilities within the church. And so, can you just kind of give us a behind the scenes look, what people don't typically see at what it looks like
Yeah.
with how the elders, cooperate with one another?
That's a great question, and something I would like to see more of, because just to be completely honest, don't have a lot of experience. I've never been on a team of elders before, um, but I imagine that the dynamic is different from each group of men, and how they interact and operate with one another, how they communicate, how they get things done together, how they make decisions, how they think through different church issues. But ideally, behind the scenes, they are praying, they are meeting in small groups, they are meeting one on one, they are thinking about the church at large, who is struggling, and who else may be able to encourage them or struggle them, and sort of being matchmakers behind the scene. They have different giftings and different abilities, and so some of them may be able to do things during the evenings with other church members, whereas others are going to be a little bit more remote. And so there's different. There's just a variety of different ways that they can operate. Um, but they are going to hopefully have some regular opportunities to get together where they are going to have elder meetings and talk about the church and pray for the members and look forward for the body, and sort of make those decisions of oversight and where we're headed and where we're going. Um, so I think it looks different, and we'll kind of have to see what that looks like in the replant. Um, Joey and I certainly need to do more of that now. We need to coordinate more and um, be on the same page. And so that's something that the church can pray for in application. We want us to be working together behind the scenes really well. I think it's a tendency for any church that takes on elders to almost have these little silos that are built up across the church. This elder has this ministry, this elder has this ministry, this elder has this ministry. And so I think it'd be good for us to steer away from that as much as possible, because we unfortunately create, almost like a fan club. These people like this elder, this people like this elder, and so while you might have a person that you resonate with a little bit more based on your personality or their teaching style, you still want to see the whole group of men as your elders, your shepherds. uh, and so anyways, that's kind of a rabbit hole answer, but uh, hopefully that makes some sense. Hopefully we'll be able to answer that better in the future.
Right. Yeah, it's a hard question because obviously it does look different for every congregation. But yeah, I think that was really good. I think you gave a lot of clarity on elders and what they look like and what they do, and and you know how they cooperate with one another. That's really people. I think um, that will that will look differently depending on who the elders are,
Right.
what their lives, what's happening in their lives, what their what season they're in, all kind of different things.
Right.
But yeah,
All right. Good stuff. Well, thank you for signing on here, Josh. Lord willing, next week we will talk a little bit about deacons. And so maybe I'll throw a couple questions at you as a new deacon. So looking forward to that. Lord willing, we'll be in Acts chapter 6 this Sunday. Get your Bibles out. We'll be praying for you. Love you dearly. Have a great evening.